Heyo. So it just feels like things just pile on top of each other, and all of this that happens out there. And I'm not just talking about online. Obviously, that's a thing, but I'm talking just in, like in our city, things are starting to kind of return. We're in phase 3 now of the return back to work. This isn't going to be comic related whatsoever. I'm going to try to contain myself and not swear too much. But honestly, like, I'm not well, I can probably with some thought pinpoint it, but I'm not exactly sure when this kind of praising of ignorance and fucking stupidity became a badge of honor. I said it on Twitter before. I won't read the whole thing, but I mean, fuck your statues. Every single fucking one of them. I don't give a shit if the fucking statue that got defaced actually was someone who was a slave. Fuck all the statues. Fuck every single one of them. Read a fucking book. Destroy all the fucking statues. The thing that I think isn't understood about some of these things is that in order to kind of keep the momentum, these things help keep that momentum, and you can see those changes. Hey, Ben. You can see those changes happening in real time, right? So we have this momentum built up rather, where we're seeing some things change. So in order to kind of keep that momentum going, you're seeing these actions, you're seeing these people taking control of their cities, and instead of asking, fucking demanding and doing it themselves when they're met with skepticism or some fuckface who's got some bullshit idea about it based purely on ignorance. I don't want to have the conversation. The fucking thing is coming down. End of story. You're wearing your fucking mask if you want to come in here. End of story. Whatever you choose to believe in your personal life, go for it. It's increasingly frustrating, and then seeing things that are happening kind of within the comics world and stuff. And again, I put this to all art in general. I mean, the business that I am in is fucking horrible for this kind of shit. The fact that there's people that can be associated with these companies and their big names, and I'm talking about you, Mike Mignola, not saying shit, go fuck yourself. That's bullshit. It pisses me off that no matter who you are, no matter what your rank is, no matter what your popularity is, if shit is going south and you know about it and this kind of behavior is happening, as a fucking human being, you owe it. And I don't want to hear that you're scared to have the conversation. And I don't want to hear that it's an uncomfortable thing. And I don't want to hear you're worried about your career. Fuck your career. If you see that shit going on around you, you owe it to another human being to step up and say something. And I think that some of that, because I see that kind of thing, I am increasingly, there was a time where I understood it. There was a time where, of course, I'm always going to be there to try to help people have difficult conversations. Absolutely. That goes for here at home. That goes with personal relationships with friends. That goes to work, obviously. But I'm finding it increasingly difficult to listen to those half-assed excuses. If you're seeing something that is wrong, you have to speak up about it. Full stop. And I don't want to hear that you're scared. And I don't want to hear that you're nervous. I don't want to hear it. I do not want to hear it. You need to act. And it's time for everybody to stand up and say shit. Because it's frustrating as hell being the only voice out there saying shit when it's happening. Yo, Weird Dad, how's it going, man? So I mean, that's, my mind is racing like a million miles an hour with all sorts of shit. And I mean, you know, I had a moment where I lost it on Twitter for sure. Not directed at anybody, just purely frustrated tweets, which I don't normally like to do because the platform is ridiculous and you can't communicate properly through there, especially when there's so much going on. So I don't know, I can't let it go. So I thought I would shoot this. Whether this stays or not, we'll see. But we have some serious shit going on, and we always have. Let's get that out of the way. There's always been shit that's been going on for sure. It really feels like it's reached a peak. Just seeing what's going on out there, coming out of this lockdown, because I mean, the other thing is we're still in a pandemic. And the focus on politicians, and I'm talking local politicians too. Trust me, none of this that I'm saying is directed at one particular country. None of this is directed at one particular individual. This is across the board issues. Yes, there's some places that have been hit harder, and there's some places that have been dealing with things a lot worse, for sure. But I'm talking across the board, these things, when I speak about this. The focus on, well, we would really hate to go back to work, and it would really be a shame to have to shut down businesses again. I don't see any conversations from politicians where they're saying it would be a shame to have another 10, 20, 30, 40, 50,000 people die because we've done things. It's this focus and this talk about the business and going back to the economy. And I mean, I don't want to hear any conversations about the fucking common flu. I don't want to, those conversations are done. They were done fucking months ago when we surpassed, or when we equaled at least, the number of deaths annually around the planet in the space of 8 months. There's still 4 months to go-ish before we reach a full year of this virus. Probably more than that. Depends on a few things. So the fact that that's kind of not first and foremost coming out of people's mouths is just endlessly frustrating. Because, I mean, that's what we're talking about, right? Like, we're not talking about people having diarrhea and puking. We're talking about the worst case scenario where people are just fucking dropping dead. So, and the other frustrating part is, again, people in positions getting into, whether they're elected positions, whether they're hired positions, whatever the positions you're in, where you have a bit more control over your immediate surroundings. The fact that you don't do anything, if you're in those positions, you don't deserve to be in the positions. You're there for a very specific purpose. You've made your way up the ladder, or not up a ladder whatsoever. You've just been inserted into a position. You fucking owe it to that position and everybody that you work for. Because if you're a politician, motherfucker, you work for me. So get your ass out there and work. And that's something I've spoken about before. I've been a lifelong NDP supporter here in Canada, and I'm fed up with the silence from the NDP. And then the one outburst, like, I'm fed up with it. If you're in these positions, you need to be speaking up. That's what you're there for. I am seeing people locally politicians here in Winnipeg speaking up, which I'm very proud of. But there's still a lot more to do. Sure, and I mean that can be a discussion. New Democratic Party. It's so we have 3 parties here in Canada. Arguably, we only have 2. NDP has never held the Prime Minister office. NDP has never had that opportunity. So we have the Conservatives, we have the Liberals, and then we have the NDP party. NDP is more kind of labor-based. Classically, has been more labor-based and aligns with a lot of labor unions. And we're dead for sure. That's absolutely something. You're going to reach these peaks and there's going to be something that takes people out. My issue with this, though, is that if we're going to take it seriously and we're going to lock people down and we're going to shut down the economy, then we've decided to take it seriously. And then we take it seriously the full way through. We don't fucking half-ass it and then decide that, you know, start making up all this other bullshit. We either take it seriously or we don't take it seriously. Early on, I didn't take it as seriously as I should have, like right at the very beginning, before we got kind of told we had to isolate and businesses and workplaces were shut down. Don't worry about it, Damien. I mean, you know, like I said, it's, you know, it's Canada. Things are going to be different across the board. We get bombarded with United States politics, as does the rest of the fucking globe. And I love my American friends, but fuck your country, man. Seriously, I'm sick and fucking tired of hearing about that orange prick. And I'm sick and fucking tired of people claiming that they're so shocked every single time he opens his fucking mouth. I'm done. I've been done with that for a long time, honestly. I don't listen to the guy speak. I don't watch the clips of him speaking. If I can avoid it, sometimes on the news, I will hear a clip of him speaking. I avoid it, but I'm really getting sick of people who are still, oh my God, I can't believe it. What do you mean you can't believe it? Have you not been paying fucking attention? And honestly, every single person in the States better be voting. Like, there is not going to be any room for not participating. Do I think you have a great second option? No, I absolutely don't. But fuck that bullshit. Vote for that motherfucker. Vote for that old ass motherfucker. Get that orange prick out of there and start making some changes. And like I've spoken about before in a video, you need every single one of us. I understand. I get it. I totally get it, Damien. Pardon my, you know, kind of outburst. I totally understand that your whole system is ruined down there. I get it. And that's where I align myself more with people who just say, fuck the entire system. It all needs to fucking burn down and we need to start from scratch because shit is so broken all over the place. And again, this is where I get general again. Shit is so broken all over the place that it honestly seems like the only way, because every other way is this constant cycle. And what did I see? I saw a comedian talking about, you know, people think that rioting is like option A. Rioting is like option C, he was saying in his little piece that I saw. Option A was taking a knee, but then that got us in trouble. Then option B was going out and protesting, but then that got us beaten up. So option C is we burn the fucking city down. And that's kind of where I'm at with this. There's only so many times you can have a cycle of trying to fix a system that's completely fucking broken. Do I have all the answers for how to rebuild it? Shit, no. But I'm not elected in those positions. And that's where it comes down to trying to engage with local politics and trying to engage in some fashion somehow, even if that is just spending a little bit of time every night or a couple of times a week to focus on what's happening around you locally and participating that way, even if that's how it starts. That's flat out, that's my answer. That's how it starts, in needing to do those kind of things and then building from there. And again, forcing their hands. If these politicians aren't doing stuff that they've said that they were going to do, then it comes to pressuring them, comes to continually putting that pressure. And then it comes down to the whole argument of, well, you know, if I just send that one email, what's one email going to do? Hey man, you sent the email. Because if everybody, and again, this goes back to the NDP thing. That's what everybody says about when it comes to voting. Well, NDP doesn't really have a chance, so I don't vote for them. I'd like to vote for them, but they don't really have a chance, so I'm going to vote for so-and-so or so-and-so. If all of those people actually voted for NDP, NDP would get the office, and that's happened. I don't know if I'm borderline done with them after what's been happening this past this year of 2020. I'm right on the edge of packing it in with them. I don't know who the hell I would vote for if that was the case, but I don't know what to do at this particular moment in time right now. Yeah. And I don't know what to do about engaging with this just blatant ignorance that somehow is a trophy and something to be proud of. And yes, of course, you should question all your sources. Absolutely. You should make sure that you're reading things properly, and you should make sure that you're looking for alternate points of view. Abso-fucking-lutely. But if you start reading those alternate points of view and they want to tell you things like the earth is flat, or masks aren't the way to go, and you're being oppressed, you need to push that shit to the side, because that's just fucking ignorant. And there's no time for that level of ignorance. And I mean, again, if we want to talk about culling the herd, part of me feels like that. You know what? You don't want to wear a mask. You want to go to the rally and rub shoulders with 7 other people who showed up to his rally. Go for it. Good luck to you. I don't have enough solid perspectives of my own. I'm prone to navel gazing and becoming so indecisive. I'm probably part of the problem. I don't really know how to answer that. I don't know you, so it would be unfair of me to make any of those judgments. I mean, I don't know what you're like on a day-to-day basis. The only thing that I would say to that is, if you're typing that and you recognize it, you recognize enough that you can change some of those things. Start participating. I don't have all my own ideas about shit. There's things that I don't fucking know about at all. But the thing is, you have to know enough to know when you're an idiot and just keep your mouth shut. I mean, there's many, especially since I got this job, there's been multiple times I've been in meetings and I don't understand, so I don't say shit. I keep my damn mouth shut and I listen to what other people are saying, and then try to form an opinion based on what I'm hearing and things that I think about later on or look into later on. Yeah, I mean, I don't see that as necessarily a bad thing. None of my perspectives, there's more perspectives that are becoming more solidified over the past little while, I can tell you that much. And I just, you know, part of it is I just don't know. The thing is, I don't know what to do, because again, it seems like the whole thing is so beyond repair that it really just seems more and more every single day that, fuck it, we get rid of everything and we try to figure this out again. We get rid of everything. And I know that that's coming from a place of just frustration and just being fed up with continually hearing stories, both locally and internationally. Because again, I'm not just talking like a Twitter perspective, or I'm not just talking like a news perspective. I'm talking all forms, everywhere I go, in my real life, in my social life, in my internet and social media life. All of these places, you're bombarded with this stuff, and it just feels like roadblock after roadblock, when some of the things that are being asked for are truly, really fucking simple, basic things. I want to be able to walk home and not get fucking killed. That's pretty goddamn basic to me. There's no fucking discussion in there. There's no discussion. There's discussion on what we do to solve that problem. Yes. But even there, I feel that there's minimal discussion. But the basic idea of I don't want to go to the grocery store and potentially because I need to go and pick up medication, pick up groceries, whatever it is that you need to go out and do, and then run the risk of catching a virus and bringing it home to my elderly family that I'm looking out for, whatever your home life is, and killing somebody. That's a pretty simple, basic premise. And I don't understand why we're arguing about these simple, basic facts. There's nothing to fucking argue about. You put your fucking knee on some guy and he can't breathe and you kill him. That's fucking wrong. Full stop. No discussion. No buts. None of that shit. It's fucking wrong. And if you can't see that, you're a fucking piece of shit. And I don't have time for you. I just don't. I do not. You know, and then seeing this other stuff within the comics industry and again entertainment in general, because the film industry is not even close to any sort of bar of fucking professionalism or lacking any of these issues. Some of the shit that happens is just it's amazing. It's incredible to me. And again, I can't help but put it in this perspective because again, I've had my own life and I've had my own experiences. I've had a lot of different jobs before I started working in this industry, multiple places, from group care homes to to welding shops to warehouses, you know what I mean? Like to teaching swimming when I was a teenager, you know, like all of this shit. Coming into this industry, it still, I have moments, even though I've been in it for, I don't know, 15 years, I still have moments where I scratch my head and I can't figure out why the fuck some things happen the way that they do. I just don't understand it. And I feel sometimes like an alien watching this shit because I feel like everybody else has this, they're just going on about things, and the thing to me that stands out as weird doesn't stand out, or if it does to other people, they don't vocalize it. So when I read all these things about these editors and these comic book creators and people who were in the industry while this behavior was going on, and the one recently that got to me was, you know, it was also proposed that there was some alcoholism involved in it. I don't fucking care if there was drug addiction in it. I don't give a shit. The behavior was fucking unacceptable. Whether they were hammered or high on fucking crack or completely sober or whatever it is, it's unacceptable. And if there is drug and alcohol problems, the fact that people aren't dealing with it is also mind-boggling, especially in a workplace, especially. And it's disappointing, again, when you see these things come out and these creators come out speaking out against it, who have been associated with the companies, and don't tell me for a second that you didn't know about it. I don't believe you. I'm sorry. I do not believe you, especially if you're a particular individual who is very successful and who is kind of a fucking cornerstone of that company. I don't believe you. I just absolutely do not. You can tell me a million ways to Sunday that you had no idea. You're fucking lying. Even if you only knew a fraction of one incident, you knew enough to say something. And it's disappointing. And that's what leads me all back to, I'm glad that people are speaking up. Do I agree with every single thing and every single person that they've speak? Yeah, I'm totally talking Magnolia. Yeah, absolutely, Damien. there's there's things in there. I am just glad to see that people are speaking up, and I think the conversations that need to happen more so are, how can we now give people coming into these industries the tools necessary so they can not put themselves in potentially dangerous situations. One thing that stood out to me was teaching people, instead of giving your personal information out to someone who says they can help you, just ask for their card. And then you have the control. You can get in touch with them if you choose to do so. They can't get in touch with you. Part of my job is dealing with people that are newer to the industry, and specifically our union. And some of the things that I think about is exactly those kind of things. How can you set yourself up so there's less potential? Because unfortunately, human beings are pieces of shit, and there's always going to be some piece of shit out there that's going to want to fuck you over, take advantage of you, hold power over you, whatever it is that their little weird fucking quirk is. So how can we make those potentially dangerous situations less probable? So what kind of tools can we be teaching? What kind of ways can we educate people coming into any sort of business? What kind of introductory training? I don't know what. And then where does that start? My daughter is in Taekwondo. She's been in Taekwondo now for a while. She needs to, I feel it's necessary. My boy is in Taekwondo too. This isn't a boy-girl thing. I feel like it's something that I wish I would have done when I was growing up. My dad wanted to get me into boxing. I didn't have any interest in it. I didn't pursue it. Not that I needed to. It's not like, you know, nothing like that. It's just that I want my children to have some sort of level of self-defense, and I want them to have some sort of level of self-worth, which I think you can also be taught in these things. So how do we continue that level of engagement with people going into workplaces? Is it a fucking shame that we have to do some of this stuff? Sure, I guess we could have that conversation. But again, it's one of those pointless conversations, because the fact is we need to do it. So how do we do it? So I feel like these conversations would happen more if everyone wasn't so terrified of getting raked over the coals. The thing is, though, that can't be, that's not a good enough reason not to have the conversation. So maybe that's also something that needs to be taught. How to have difficult conversations, because guess what? Conversations are going to be difficult, because you and I aren't going to agree on something, and I'm going to try to express my viewpoint on it. And yes, there's a cutoff for it. There's an absolute hard line in the fucking sand where it's no longer a conversation. You're now just saying something, whatever it is, racist, sexist, whatever it is, or I'm saying something racist, sexist, where that's just the dividing line. But any shade of conversation within that is going to be difficult. Fucking rights, it's going to be. So then how do we get ourselves more comfortable with having these conversations, and how do we teach people to engage in those conversations? I've always been a little bit of a confrontational individual. It's been difficult at times. I hate doing it sometimes. I'm tired of being the one that's doing it sometimes, but it happens. So how do we teach people to have those conversations? We're all living in our own reality, as a friend of mine put it. He's convinced that nobody's reality is the same as anybody else's. Not a single human being on this planet shares the reality that someone else does. Whether that comes down to a perspective of your surroundings, comes to your upbringing, comes to all of these things that impact an individual, none of us are facing the same reality. But within those different realities, there are some things that cross over. And how can you express your reality to another individual and try to make a point and try to have a conversation about things? You're not going to avoid hurting someone's feelings. You're not going to avoid getting someone potentially pissed off. So how do we work with that to still have those conversations and still push things forward? There's just so much rage boiling right now. Even if someone wanted to come forward and admit wrongdoings, absolutely, there's rage boiling, because there's a lot of things to be really angry about, because this behavior we keep finding out about is fucking wrong. And the people who are behaving in these manners, the people that are behaving in these ways, need to be penalized somehow. There's different levels of stuff. Yeah, I mean, again, like, I don't have sympathy. I'm trying to answer the question. I don't have sympathy. If you're doing something wrong, if you're sexually assaulting someone, or if you're physically abusing someone, or if you're just a fucking prick and you want to come out about those things, then maybe look at coming out to help yourself. You know, there's individuals who go for counseling and they start to deal with their issues, and then they decide how they're going to come out of that. We cannot, it's like having a job that I had where there was a hardcore alcoholic. Why the fuck do I have to tiptoe around the fucking hardcore alcoholic who's not helping themselves when I'm in the workplace? It's not part of my job when I'm stocking the fucking shelves and driving the forklift around. It's not part of my job to deal with a piece of shit like that who's coming in stinking of booze, wanting to pick fights, cursing up and down and abusing people verbally. Ain't a part of my job. Don't have sympathy. Deal with your shit. Be a fucking adult. Deal with it somewhere else. And beyond that, the individuals, again, going back to the people that are in charge, fucking deal with it. That's your job. That is 100% your job when you're in those situations, when you're in those positions, rather. That is 100% your job. And especially if you have that job, I have no room for hearing that it's a difficult conversation. I don't have room for hearing it. I don't care. You've chosen this job. You are now a supervisor. You're now someone who's in charge. You need to deal with these situations, and it needs to be dealt with. Absolutely, Damien. Even before all these revelations, it's been clear to me since I started listening to comics podcast interviews that the comics industry is all about networking. And I would extend that to any sort of entertainment, any sort of art. It's all about networking, because it's the same with our industry. It's all about networking. It's all about getting your foot in that door. Abso-goddamn-lutely. Combine that with a star system and you're going to have big problems. Absolutely. Which is, again, all the more reason for oversight, because, again, these individuals who are in these positions, who have this power to take advantage of people, you're not going to convince me that nobody knew about it. You're just not going to convince me. You can try. You're not going to convince me that not a single motherfucker who was able to do something about it didn't know the first thing about it, and it had gone on for years. So that's where it falls down, because I agree with you. It's very much about the networking. It's very much about that, how you break in and who you know and how you build those relationships. All the more reason to make sure that those fucking pieces of shit that you have on your roster, you're getting rid of them. Don't give a shit how much money they bring in. There's another jerk-off editor out there who can do just as much of a good job. There's some other bullshit actor out there that can say the fucking dialogue just as good as that knucklehead. There's some other piece of shit musician who can play the guitar just as much as that idiot. They're out there by the fucking boatload. There's no reason to keep rewarding people for their bad behavior. There's just not. Hello, Rasa, if you're still here. It's working around defenses. Worldviews are usually heavy propped up by mountains of defenses. Absolutely. And that's where a huge challenge comes in, because then you start challenging people and they take it personally, because and those things kind of build up, absolutely 100%. And that's where it's really difficult to try to break through that, which is then you start gauging of when it's a conversation and when it's just not even talking to you about it. If you're that far gone, and if there's that many things coming up in front of just having a basic conversation, like happened with that fucking fuzzy-hatted piece of shit all those years ago that I tried to have a conversation about, you really want to have a conversation with me about if racism exists, if that's the start of your conversation, that's the beginning argument that you feel we really need to discuss, done. There's no room forward from there. There's no way to move forward from there. Then you go on and you do your thing. I'm going to go over here and do my thing. And we're going to, the people that I'm working with and the people that I'm communicating with and the people that I'm talking to are going to start looking for responses to it. And you all can go and have those conversations with your masks off, trying not to fall off the edge of the planet, you know, like go for it by all means. It's like whole experimental music scene knows about Michael Gira, but that lid is still tight. Yeah, and I don't know enough about the Swans in general, so I actually don't know about Michael Gira. I'm not sure. I think it's Gira that you pronounce the last name. I don't know much about him. I'm not overly familiar with his music, period. It's every industry, and that's also the true thing. It is every industry, and that's not even entertainment. That's, again, jobs that I had. It's fucking welding shops. It's fucking warehouse work. It's, you know, halfway homes. It's everywhere. Like, it's everywhere, which is why we need to do something about it, which is why we need to figure out a way to do it. The world lets the assholes get away with stuff and emboldens them. So you're right. Zero tolerance is the route to change. And that applies to the police too. Absolutely. And I find the biggest thing is that we've introduced, trying to word this properly, some of the training that's been introduced in our industry is supervisory training, taking into mind that someone may be going into those roles because of the abundance of work that's coming our way, has been pushed into these roles because maybe they have the most experience. They're the ones that are still available while everybody else is busy. So they're being pushed into these roles. So the concern is that that's great. They know the department really well, but when you step into those supervisory roles, you don't have those tools that you need for those roles rather aren't something that a human being just comes with. Some people have the ability to do that easier than others, but I don't feel like those tools generally are something that we're all equipped with. So how do you run a group of people and be in charge of a group of people, small group, big group, whatever size? How do you discipline people when you need to have those conversations? How do you make sure you're trying to build up the relationships within your specific department and every other department on the shop floor or wherever it is, right? Like, how do you do those things? So that kind of recognition. But then the other part that I find doesn't happen enough is the punishment part. So then you have these parameters set out, you have these workplace harassment policies, you have your COVID policies, whatever it's going to be going forward. How do you enforce that? And how do you ensure that you do enforce that? Because the moment that you do not enforce something, that sends a very strong message that all those policies don't mean shit. And I find that that's a big, big issue, that enforcement side people don't want to do. And I don't quite understand. I guess I sort of understand. It's not an easy thing to do, kind of dropping the hammer on someone to some degree. It does take some work. So how do we also go forward and train people in those positions, these kind of management styles? Because again, there's going to be people that are going to take to it easier. There's going to be people that just won't be able to do it. So then how do we transition those people that can't do it out of those jobs because they're the ones that are ultimately causing damage as well. And I would argue that the damage that they're causing is even more so than the individual doing the harassment, because they're giving them this free flowing playing field to just go after anybody. Once they start testing the waters and seeing that nothing is going to happen because of these ineffectual managers or bosses, employers, that just gives them free reign, right? So how do we focus some of these conversations, and how do we focus some of this education, and how do we penalize people for not doing their job? Yeah, there's things that I want to add to that, but I hesitate to say them out loud because they do have to do with work specifically, and I don't want to get too specific about my job. Yeah, I just feel that that's a big part of it. That's a part that needs to be figured out. Yeah, holy shit, 41 minutes. I didn't realize that was that long already. I'm just feeling really drained, and it's been rumbling. I went for a quick pint with a friend of mine. I was going to drive around and just blast some fucking Mersbow to try to like cleanse my system, but it started dumping rain out here, and I couldn't really see outside of the car because of the amount of rain. So I just came home. So this stuff has been stewing in me for days now. And then it's like I said, whether that's real life, whether that's news that I'm listening to in the car, whether that's social media stuff that's happening, it just reached a bit of a boiling point earlier where I just can't, and I just don't know. It's difficult sometimes to stay optimistic. I feel like for the most part, even though I have a very strong pessimistic and skeptical side of me, I do feel like I do have a very optimistic part of my personality, and that optimistic part of my personality is having a fucking challenge coming out these days. Because if anybody saw that Killer Mike thing in Atlanta when he talked to the media, when he just bluntly says, I woke up this morning wanting to see the whole world burn, that's kind of how I'm feeling these days. Like, honestly, just fucking done. Just get rid of it, start from scratch, you know? Yeah, and I think that with some thought, Damien, I think that anybody that's had any experience in any job can see that. And I think that's, honestly, I truly believe that that's the core of it. Yes, there's going to be people with issues, whether that's drugs and alcohol, whether that's just they're pricks, whether that's just they're horrible people, whether that's just they don't know how to communicate with people, you know, because again, that's the other thing that I've run into. There's just people that have a certain way of communicating that really just makes people tense. They don't say anything specifically to be abusive. It's just the way that they communicate is more bump, but da da da, like just really direct, and that throws people off too. So how do you deal with all of that? How do you try to create this environment where people can communicate better, and how do you oversee that? Because again, it's your goddamn job. When you're in the position, it drives me crazy hearing that from supervisors. It drives me nuts. It's literally world's smallest violin. I don't fucking care. Get in there and do it, because it's your goddamn job. And if you don't want to do it, you need to look for another job, full stop, because it's your job. When I started getting higher up in my department specifically, and had to go to more meetings, and had to deal with more PMs, and had to deal with more producers, I hated every second of it. I hated it. I wasn't good at it. I wasn't comfortable at it. I didn't enjoy it. And it literally I just had to convince myself over time that I need to figure out a way to deal with it, because this is now what I need to do. My job is no longer hanging out on set, pushing the dolly, flagging lights, whatever it was, sitting on an apple box. My job is now to do these things and finding a way to embrace it. And was I successful every single show? Fuck no. I shit the bed royally on a couple of shows early on, big time. So all of those things come into play. How can you teach someone that stuff? And I just don't know the answer to it. I really don't. I just know that we need to figure something out, because every single second that I turn around, there's some horrible story, and the stories are only going to get more now that over this last couple of years, the dam has kind of broken where people feel more comfortable to tell their stories. You're seeing more and more stories because now that pile of people who have spoken up, even if the industry doesn't relate to your industry, the fact that people are speaking up just gives more people courage to speak up. So that those floodgates are wide goddamn open now. Like, the shit is going to come pouring out, and that's a really, really, really good thing. And that's why it comes back to me with this whole statue thing. I see people getting pissed off that, well, that actual statue was about someone who was a slave. Don't fucking care. Tear all the fucking statues down. Same thing with the harassment things. Is there going to be stuff where there's a more nuance to it? Absolutely. But the thing is, I want those people to speak. I want those stories to get out there. I want people to have the discussion. I don't want them to feel like, well, mine isn't quite like so-and-so's. That one was really dramatic. That mine is sort of like this. And I don't even know. I don't care. Just get it out there. Just talk about it. Let's expose this shit so we can talk about all of it. And then we can sort through it and have all those difficult conversations. Because trust me, those goddamn conversations are going to be super fucking difficult. So we need to figure this out. And how you start figuring it out is, again, participating. And you just need to participate locally. You need to figure out something that you can do. And again, even if it's really, really small and it's just paying attention a little bit locally, a couple of times a week, once a day, whatever you can manage, just some form of participation locally to just pay attention to what's going on in your neighborhood, even if it's just having conversations with your neighbors that maybe you haven't spoken to before, like starting there, starting somewhere to start engaging with your community and your surroundings, and then extend that over time as it becomes easier and easier to politics, to something where you can actually make demands on people that work for you to make the changes that you want to see. I'm going to stop there because then I'm just going to start going in circles. So fuck 12, fuck your statues, speak up, and fuck ineffectual managers. Get those jackoffs out of there. And for the love of God, get rid of that orange prick, because I don't have faith that it's going to happen. Again, it's hard to be optimistic about some of these things, and I'll see it when I believe it. Like, I'll see it when I believe it. I'll believe it when I see it, rather. Sorry. 1 pint. I swear I only had 1 pint. Yeah, all right. Thanks, everybody. I'm drained.